All right, I did.
We're orderly.
Roll call.
Aida,
Yes.
Sean,
Here.
Sylvia,
Present.
Steve,
Here.
Ann.
Here.
I'd like to welcome everybody who's present and those who are not. And ask our guests to sign in the book there, just so that we have record that you were here. And moving on to communications, 2.1. I'd like to acknowledge that we got a letter from Brian Knussman dated March 27th, 2017, and a letter from John Day dated March 28th, 2017. I'd like to recognize the members of the audience, and is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the board? Sorry? Oh, minutes, we're gonna do, approval of minutes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll be right back to it.
Just one more minute, I'm sorry. I skipped over approving the March 9th, 2017 minutes.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Thank you.
Second.
Any discussion, any corrections, any additions, anything? Okay, sorry, roll call.
Sean,
So I was not here, so I'm going to abstain.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Aida.
Yes. All right, apologies. Okay, take two, Al. Would you like to address the board?
If I could,
Yes.
I've
please.
got some good news and some bad news, so what would you like me to start with?
You get to decide if you want to go up to the microphone so that
Oh,
our audience can hear you
Okay.
beyond here.
Thank you.
so Amy, do you have a preference for the good news first, or?
Should we vote on it? I'd like to table the bad.
Whatever you want.
Okay.
Well, let me start with the good news.
Okay.
Dawn invited me to come, or that was about 6 weeks ago or something, when there was the project-based learning thing. And so yeah, I came up there at 7:30 or something, and they met with the teachers, on their Wednesday morning, the planning thing. And then Mario did a presentation. There were a big bunch of people from Finneytown, all over the place. I was planning to spend only a couple hours, but I was so impressed that I spent the whole day. And so the last event was we went to the high school for the afternoon, and the very end of the day, there was a question and answer session with a bunch of high school kids in the library, really answering questions from all of us there. And to me, that sort of captured the success of the whole afternoon. I kind of overheard some of the visitors, I think they were from Finneytown, there was a group of them, they were talking about the day, and that's how I sort of eavesdropped on the thing, and I wrote it down, and this is not exactly, but one person said, what was the most impressive part of the day for me? It was those students that just answered our questions. They were so poised. Our students would not have responded to our questions with their confidence and organization. That to me says the most about the impact of project-based learning. I thought that really captured, and they were really impressed. And I was impressed too, because I knew a lot. I go to the days when they
Exhibition nights.
and I'm always impressed, but to see it from that standpoint, and to see the visitors so impressed by it, because they were asking them hard questions, and they really came through well. So, I told Dawn I'd give her a list of more people in town to be part of it, because, I think I was impressed. I think if more people in town would sit in on the thing, it would have even convinced maybe some of the doubters. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all.
That wasn't so bad.
But now the bad news, Tim said he just sent me an email, and we were just talking over here, so to some degree, he has already addressed some of my concerns. But I thought it was important to share something, because I know I was on the board, a long time ago, and sometimes I don't think I really was tuned into what was going on as much as people who were, in there every day. But what couple months ago, I invited some of the students of color group from the high school to come to Unitarian Fellowship to talk to us about some of their experiences. I mean, some of the people in fellowship were concerned because of Alexi's essay, on Martin Luther King Day and all, and we just wanted to hear from them. So a panel of 3 came, and they talked to us about their perceptions and things, and it was a very successful program. What made it even better was that some of the parents of some of the kids were there, and they would interject their experiences a generation ago going through the school, and the perception was that things aren't as good today as they were a generation ago, and you'd like to think we were making progress. So they talked about racist remarks, and their perception was that generally the remarks tend more to come from the open enrollment kids that are not in the community. They feel the students that live in town are more tuned in to race issues. And then a couple weeks, maybe last week, I heard about a very disturbing case of a Jewish kid at the school that was subjected to some really inappropriate comments. Now, kids will make mistakes. I mean, they have maturity. It doesn't bother me so much. The kids are making racist and anti-Semitic comments. Well, what bothers me is, according to the sources I've talked to, that there have been other students and sometimes teachers or staff people that have been present when these things happen, and they basically ignore them. And that is very disturbing to me, that there's nothing, people aren't stepping in. And so this year is pretty much done, but I'm just hoping maybe for next year, before the school begins, or something, there can be some emphasis to try to get the teachers, the staff, everyone, and the students too, to have the courage to step in when some of this stuff happens, and to cut it off. I mean, I think if this happened a few times, they would really shut off this kind of stuff pretty quickly if they knew their peers and teachers and others were objecting to these kinds of remarks. I mean, and then, I like to think, my last idea was that, we can have African Americans come and talk, but in some ways, it might be valuable to have some white community members go that have dealt with racism. And many of you may not know, I was born and raised and graduated from Ferguson High School in Ferguson, Missouri. My father was born and raised in Ferguson, Missouri. I have many extended family still live there. And, I grew up in a very racist environment. Our schools were not integrated until 1954, even though there were a few blacks that lived in town then. But it's taken me a long time to develop the strategies to overcome this, and it's always in here. I have to be constantly on guard, and I could tell you things I've done in the past that been just unintentionally, because it's the way I was programmed. And so, I mean, maybe some white community members, a panel or something, might have an impact on some of the kids to help them to see, that this is something that is in you, and you've got to work hard to try to overcome it. Hey, that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
And of course, it's interesting, you were just saying how the kids exuded all this poise and confidence
Right.
on that panel, and then
That's
when
right.
you're in a situation with their peers, some
Right.
of that just sort of goes away. So, how do you tap into that and make sure that they feel strong in any environment.
Sure.
So, just interesting.
That's why I say, good news and bad news.
The concept that silence actually often equals approval. If you say
That's
nothing,
right.
you're almost condoning the behaviors.
Well, thank you.
I wonder if you think it'd be okay if Tim should kind of speak a little bit to that, or if you don't want to, we don't have to, if you don't want to,
That's fine with me.
I just think, because I think some of these things have come up, at least we've heard it before, I think, and so I appreciate your comments, Al, and I know Tim can talk a little bit about what the school has been doing over the past few months, for sure, around this work, and I think that's an important thing for folks to hear, at least, you know. And then maybe if you could directly address what Alex said, I think that's an important point, too.
Yeah. So, you know, it's in schools, and especially in our school, when one talks about race, or gender, or ethnicity, or religion, sometimes in Yellow Springs in particular, we feel like sometimes teenagers do that sometimes the rules don't apply. That certain norms and that we are, you know, pretty casually invested and involved in a pretty progressive community. And so we do hear from teachers sometimes that you know, they'll redirect kids on some things, but sometimes kids don't get, well, I don't mean anything by it. You know, I'm coming from a super far left-wing piece when I'm talking about this. And they're going, yeah, but this is not coming from a spot of empathy or compassion or understanding kind of the history and the impact of some of these words. So one of the things we did starting the week right after the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration, when a ninth grader shared really an awful incident of racism that occurred at a classroom table. It was before class began. And so the teacher wasn't really, was in the class, but it wasn't something that she could have known about. Some student said something, according to the student, that was really just a straight up racist comment, and no other kid questioned that comment. No other student at that table said, "What do you mean by that?" Or "Why do you think that's funny?" Or any of those other things that put the burden back on the student who says some of these things. Because, you know, in this place, I don't think our kids feel that, and this is true of a lot of kids, is necessarily saying and fighting back hard against something like this, because we're all part of the same community, we're all progressive. But the reality is that our kids need better tools to figure out how to communicate when people have stepped over the line that doesn't necessarily slam them, punch at them in a way. So we immediately started working with a group of students that were interested, and we created actually the United Student Society, a long-time club name that's recently been taken out of the teacher's contract, but students said, hey, we should name it this. And so we have a group of anywhere from 18 to 25 kids or so who've been working on it. They jumped in, and their first thing was jumping in with Basim and Toya Blunt on creating the Black History Month celebration and assembly, and it was really terrific. They extended and enriched it into making sure that our partners from Central State and Wilberforce, that they jumped in and turned into a luncheon, a pizza party, and camaraderie. And what they're currently trying to think about, and it's kind of getting a bit disrupted by our testing, is a combination social experiment / MTV and OSU's Kirwan Institute for Race and Ethnicity has a combination week-long implicit bias cleanse for race and one for gender. And so, and then we recently just got word from a school district here in Greene County who's struggling with a whole lot of incidents of racism that they're struggling with that's out of the norm for them as well, though they're coming not from the progressive community I think that we are. And so they've actually asked for our students to work with them and for their students to come down and work with our students and actually be in school with us for the day. So we're trying to combine some of those pieces, but it's challenging. There's no doubt about it, and it's What makes it hard is that sometimes our kids don't, like I said, they don't fully recognize the power of their words when they're saying it, because they think it's sort of, we value free speech here in this community, and rightfully so. And sometimes, as they work through it, that sometimes I'm not sure that they're so fully aware of what's happening. I do remember a couple years ago, there was a panel at Antioch Midwest, and we had some of our African American students on it, and they said, a criticism that was received was, our school doesn't really do much in terms of Black studies, specifically. And, it's either Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and that's about it. And we talked about it as a staff back then, and said, and some of our teachers were saying, well, when we try to do some things, we get kind of poo-pooed from it. We were kind of like, oh, we don't need to know about this. We know about this already. With all sorts of things. And so, our staff has kind of gone with a bit more vested interest in making sure that some of these issues are more intentionally and explicitly worked with. But right now, in terms of the culture of students, I think that's probably the part that's most needed at this point. Because it can't always be solved by teachers, but when we hear that some teachers are not responding, and what the research says is teachers need to respond each and every time they hear it. Each and every time. So that when you bypass just one opportunity you don't have to be mean about it, but you do have to notice it, and you do have to say something. And if you don't, that is in a sense a tacit approval of it, and a permission to it. So I don't know if the incidents are increasing. I remember, I think this isn't the first Martin Luther King place celebration here in Yellow Springs. I think even the first one I was ever at, they were talking about incidents that happened, before I ever got here. And so it's not necessarily a new thing, which doesn't mean it's still not something that I think even now especially, it's a particularly conflicted time, and that we better do better with this stuff. So we think we've got some things in place, but we're trying to put more things in place, specifically on how kids can respond to it, and how teachers respond to it. And maybe that's some cultural competency, additional training. Maybe it's some other kinds of things. When we jump into a PBL that's about Yellow Springs Police and New Year's Eve incident, it's not just the community policing piece, but was there a response that was differentiated by race, in a sense, so kids are talking about that as well. So we really are talking about these issues deeply, but I don't know that kids have the right tools to be the change agent when incidental things pop up that are racist influence, that are racist terms, that are anti-Semitic perhaps, or sexist, or whatever the case may be. And so that's the piece that we don't have. So with our Gay Straight Alliance, that piece is involved in there, and that was started a couple of years ago and has been in place. But how do you be an advocate, and what tools do we give our kids to be advocates anytime you see hatred and/or stupidity and/or ignorance every single time? In ways that these are kids that your locker might be right beside. And they just might be your locker mate because it's alphabetical, right? But how do you respond to that in a community? In the same way that we all struggle with how do you respond to conflict? And you guys as board members, you go to Tom's, you reach for something at Tom's, and if there's somebody right there beside you that maybe 2 months ago criticized you pretty significantly or things. I get that on occasion. I'm a high school principal, I get that on a lot of occasions. So dealing with that stuff is part and parcel how, in a small community, there's no anonymity in a lot of ways. And that's one of the great things to figure out how to deal with. And so that's some of the stuff we're working on, but so definitely some ways to go.
Let me jump in. So a couple things I think, so we've been doing Spidey for a while, which addresses a lot of these kinds of challenges. We've been doing, the GSA has been in place for a couple years now, which I think, really attacks us as well. Gay Straight Alliance. GS, yeah. And then and Changes in the Middle is a major program that we do in middle school specifically to tackle bullying and a lot of these kinds of challenges that pop up too. So, Greenview came, the school districts we're working with came to us because there's a feeling that, Yellow Springs has something, I think, they can offer, and so I think there's a lot of work for us to do. But I think we have some things in place that we can build on and continue to grow. And so I think Tim pointed out some of that. I really am embracing this idea of using this opportunity to really start to look at some of our projects and PBL work that we're doing and really target this problem, if you will, and really try to work through it and use our instructional as make it part of what we're doing in terms of how we're learning and our kids are doing. And so the Police Challenge project was great. I know that several of the teachers are now, courageously taking on projects with kids around issues of race and issues of, just groups that have been underserved and have been really oppressed, in many ways for a while now. And so I think the work is being done, I think, within our schools, and I'm excited about where United Society will go for us in the future with the kids. So.
Well, and I would just like to add, as someone who's been working with these kids for a very long time, with John Goodall and with Don Wallace when he was still with us, and with Joan Chappelle, this has been an ongoing theme, and certainly issues that we've wanted to address head on and have continued to want to address. And I liked your phrase, stepping over the line, the kids stepping over the line, because I think that's part of what we're talking about here, is that they are adolescents, and they're constantly stepping over the line, and I think they know they're constantly stepping over the line, and so to challenge somebody else who's stepping over the line seems like, something that they can't own for themselves, and so they can't put the responsibility on other kids. But I think that working on it is hugely important, and continuing to raise their awareness and consciousness in any way, shape, or form that we can do is really, really important and integral in planting these seeds so that they do know how to use these resources. So I just want to say that I feel like it's been in our consciousness, and it's been our great desire to have kids step up and to feel their strength in being able to call other people out or call people forward. And like you said, in all kinds of possible ways that are educational, supportive, helpful. I mean, these kids, as you saw that day when you were visiting, they know how to critique each other in ways that many adults can't even. So they have the tools. They just need to learn how to exercise those tools. I appreciate your witnessing that and coming forward and talking to us about that as well. And keep up the good work, folks. It's a lot of work.
Thanks, Seth.
Okay, schools in action. All right.
That's me. I feel like I mostly have good news, maybe only have good news. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm not this. I'm gonna make Tim come up here and shake my hand and everything. Yes, yes. So, hello. I think you all know me, but for those of you at home, my name is Era Beal. I currently serve as the theater arts producer for the high school and middle school, which is a fairly new position, which you lovely people approved about 2 years ago, and has been working out well as we iron out some of the challenges. But one of the things that having this position has allowed us to do was to attend the State Theater Conference organized by the Ohio Educational Theater Association in Columbus on March 25th. So the way that worked is when we did our fall play, Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas, adapted by Ken Ludwig, which was funded, of course, by the schools, but also by the Yellow Springs Education Development. We asked for a member of the Ohio Ed TA, which stands for Ohio Educational Theater Society, to come and adjudicate it. So 2 people came and saw the show, and they rated it, and they gave us feedback. And based on that adjudication, we were invited to present an hour cutting of our show at this state theater conference. 10 shows in the entire state are invited to present an hour cutting, and then they bring in about 8 shows to do a full-length production. So we were one of the top 18 shows in the state, is basically what that boils down to. So we went, we conquered, we had fun. there's a great write-up in your report from Tim, which is actually something that I wrote, not Lori, but that's okay. She's great, so I'm okay sharing it with her. So I wanted to kind of report to you a little bit about what our students experienced at the conference and just kind of share a few random tidbits of fact about theater in our schools. So we got on the bus really early on Saturday morning. It was like 7, it was still dark, there are pictures. We drove up to Columbus, we unloaded everything out of the U-Haul into this band room. We did a very quick fight call, because if you saw Three Musketeers, there was a lot of sword action involved. And if you haven't ever done that on stage, it's something you have to rehearse in every space you do so you don't inadvertently kill someone. So we did all of that. And then we did our performance. And the great thing about this conference is it's really set up for high school students to see other high school students work. I had a couple of parents who were like, we want to come, and I was like, I don't really think it's not really for you. Like, you can come and we need chaperones, that's great. But this is really an opportunity for the kids. So my favorite part about our performance, and that our students did excellent, and it was very well received, is because we're Yellow Springs, we like to do things a little bit differently. Most schools perform in their high school shows on what's called proscenium, which is when the audience is on one side and the actors are on the other. Usually they're up on a stage and they're under a proscenium arch. That's what that arch is called around a stage. But because we're Yellow Springs, we did Three Musketeers in what's called alley or tennis court seating. Those of you who saw it will remember the action was in the middle and the audience was on either side. So one of the things we did when we got to the band room very early on Saturday morning is we rearranged all of the chairs and put out our stage so that we were in that alley tennis court seating. And I was working the door to the event as, to our performance as students were coming in, excuse me, students from other schools. And it was really fun because they would walk into the room and the chairs would be rearranged and they'd be like, whoa, what's happening? So we were, as far as I know, the only school that did not perform in proscenium. So it was kind of fun to expand the horizons of some of these other high school students, that it didn't necessarily have to be that actors here, audience here kind of thing. So after we did our performance, we ate some lunch, which was very important. We were all very hungry by that point. And then we divided and conquered, and we were at the conference for another 10 hours. So students went and saw productions that other high schools had done. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which was, if you've talked to anybody, was the favorite. They were like, they were even better than we were. We saw The Crucible, we saw this great French comedy, A Flea in Her Ear, we saw this really fascinating piece called Radium Girls, which was about girls working in factories that were being poisoned by radiums to make glowing watch dials. It's actually a really interesting, true story. They saw School of Rock, they saw Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind, for those of you who have seen the Neo-Futurists in Chicago. I don't even remember what else there was a lot of other stuff. We had 2 students who participated in an aerial workshop and learned how to spin from ribbons attached to the gym ceiling, in case you want to put them in the next, assembly. I mean, they can hold on to the ribbons. I don't know that they made it very far. We had students who attended makeup workshops. I sent a number of 8th graders home with giant stab wounds on their arm that they made for themselves. We had students who attended 21st lighting technology, 21st century lighting technology, and how to choose gel color. We had students who attended things on devising work and Shakespeare and the Voice. So everyone did a really great job of finding something to do while we were there at the event, and I was really proud. As it says in your little blurb, I'm just gonna say it again. You're walking around, there's 1,500 high school students in this high school in Dublin, and you're walking around, and like high schoolers do, you're walking through the halls, and they're sitting in the hall with their friends, playing on their phones and chatting and doing whatever they do. And those weren't our students. Our students were in workshops and performances and really making the most of their experience. So it was a really positive, amazing, fantastic time. And now, Tim, I would like you to come up so that we can make a ceremony. I'm a theater person. I like ceremony. I'm not going to make you shake my hand for, this is the participation award, and everybody who went got one, so you don't have to shake my hand for that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But I am going to make you shake your hand for this. So it just says Yellow Springs High School, Three Musketeers, 60-minute performance, 2017 Ohio Thespian State Conference.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
You're welcome.
Great job.
You did it. It was fun. Yay. Now you have to find a prominent place for that.
Yes, we do.
Not the staff bathrooms. share with you while I'm here and have your attention. So this is obviously something that conference that we used to attend, and it has been a long time, and some of you in this room probably remember it. But it was nothing we were planning on doing this year, so it was nothing we budgeted for. Going to this conference cost us about $3,700, which was much less than it could have, and because we didn't stay overnight, so we didn't pay hotel costs. So it's actually fairly affordable. And the families of students contributed to the cost, contributed about $29.75. So that means that we lost about $725 going to do this experience. But I think it was worth it. So I'm hoping that as things move forward, we can kind of plan maybe a little bit more about continuing to send a delegation. Though maybe not 33 children, that was a lot, but smaller delegations of students who can participate and enjoy this. The other thing I wanted to share with you, if you don't know, the theater program is growing by leaps and bounds. This year, I did a rough estimate, and it's been a while, so things have changed. But I think we have something like 75 individual students participating during the course of the year with the theater program in both McKinney, from McKinney and the high school. Which, how many students do you have, Tim?
We have 385.
Really, that many?
Yeah.
That's good. But it is, it is a significant portion. It's almost 25% of the students are participating in our program. And I think that's a really worthwhile thing to mention. We do a nice job. One of the things I like about our theater program, we do a nice job of providing a variety of opportunities to students. So even if you can't carry a note in a bucket, there's still a place for you. So as the handout that Tim has provided, the report also says Oklahoma, I'm not going to sing for you, though I could, opens a week from tomorrow at the Foundry Theater. For those of you who remember West Side Story, tickets sell out quickly, and we have a fire code, so I'm really going to encourage you to come the first weekend, because it's always later, particularly the first Sunday. It's a really good day to come, because you will definitely get a ticket. And I think that's all I have about our wonderful theater program, so thank you for allowing me to come. Oh, and I didn't bring students. I was going to bring students to let them talk to you about it, but they're all over in rehearsal for Oklahoma, so they couldn't come. But they were all really excited. If you run into one of the people that you know was in Three Musketeers and ask them about the conference, they will talk to you for probably quite a while about it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. 2.4 administrative reports. Right, somebody doing maths or?
We can try.
Or we could just say that Matt is camping with
Yes,
his
I can
kids,
talk
huh?
about that. So yeah, Matt is camping with kids, and
That's the beginning of his report. I am
yeah.
at Camp Curd.
So I can talk a little bit about this, one or two of these things for sure. So he's at Camp Curd, 5th and 6th graders are there now as we speak. Pretty exciting time. This is the second time we've gone to Camp Curd, and the first time 2 years ago was wildly successful. Kids really loved it, and just a great experience. So he's there with our kids, and it's, everything I think is going well. I haven't heard anything, so far everything's going good. We've been engaging in state testing. Obviously it's been a major endeavor every year, but this year it's been probably a little bit more because of a lot more I should say, because of the increased use of technology and computers now to test. So it's a radical shift for us because we sort of have to do that. We don't have much of a choice in the matter. And I just want to put a plug in for Jacob, who's behind the camera right now, for his work. He's been instrumental to this, and I've gotten 2 or 3 compliments from people about his work with this and how hard how much effort he's put in and the amount of time he's dedicating to this, that, without him it wouldn't have gone as smooth as it has gone up to this point. And so we greatly appreciate what he's done with this. So thank you for that, Jacob. Peace Week was great. You've seen the peace sign, I think it was in the paper. It was really cool. I was there for the assembly that first day, which we had a number of dignitaries that came out for the peace, I guess it's assembly, and really great assembly. And it was really nice to hear from folks and talk about use of peace. I think it was a good time to have it, especially this year, especially with everything that's going on globally and within our country. You recognize why Peace Week is so important, and such a critically important thing to do for our schools. So these are pictures of Girls on the Move and the Lego League team. So And he just wanted to share, I guess, some of this work. I think it's things that you already know about and we talked about, but we're sharing some of the pictures, at least of the kids, and those are the girls from Girls on the Move. And I believe this is from the Junior Lego League, Junior FLL, and their work. So, all right, so that's Matt's report. Anybody have any questions for Matt? I can try to answer. Okay.
Well, maybe just, is exhibition night coming up in
Yes,
May?
I can, for Matt.
May 15th for Matt.
Just want to put a plug out there for that.
So it's May 15th for the elementary school at 5:30, is that right? We're starting at 5:30, I think, this year. And then May 10th for you all?
Yes.
Yeah.
What time is that set up to be?
It's already May 15th?
Yeah, so 10 for McKinney, 6 to 7:30. And then the 5th,
It's not on the
it's not the
calendar.
15th.
It's not on the Google calendar
Yeah,
for school.
15th is the wrong, is not the accurate date, I think. I believe, hold please. I'll get it to you for sure. Not that either that way.
I don't know.
Hang on. Is it after? Why don't you keep talking, start talking to him and then I'll
Sure.
report and then I'll come look it up.
So we have been doing a lot of testing. It started 2 weeks before spring break, and we with the ACT, and will last through May 9th. That's a lot. That's a lot.
It's the 16th at 5:30, so it's a Tuesday night, 5:30 to 7, so
Thanks.
I'm pretty sure, so.
Is it gonna go on the calendar?
Yeah, it will go on the calendar.
Okay.
It's not on there now, huh? Okay.
It should already be there. Which calendar are you looking at?
The school Google calendar.
I mean, where, like on the
In
homepage?
May.
On the homepage of the website, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just asking if you, how did you navigate to that one?
I picked the calendar
So you went down to the
from
bottom.
the school website.
From here?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah, it's too
that's
bad.
pretty much how I do it.
just checking. You can get to it several ways, so, and sometimes they don't always sync.
Well, that would
Yes.
be a different problem then.
No, they
But
are,
also be-
they are divided on purpose so that you get, if you're at the buildings calendars, you only get that
I
specific,
don't
so
know
it's not
about
cluttered.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have
Right.
Susan put it on there for the district website. Thanks for the catch. All right. Tim?
Yeah, so we talked about a number of things, and both on the agenda and off, and so really two other things I think that are worth kind of sharing. Spring sports have started. I think that's a picture of the softball field, and everybody is up and running. Had good weather so far. Good weather so far. A lot of games, a lot of things happening. And then Power of the Pen regionals. Remember I talked about the Power of the Pen, the McKinney writing team that did so well at the districts, and boy, they went to regionals and did another really terrific job. They won the prestigious sweepstakes trophy. I'll be honest with you, I hadn't heard of it before.
It's the largest trophy we have in our school now, right?
Yeah, Power of the Pen does big trophies. That's one thing they do. Best combined scores for 7th and 8th graders. And I think it's really terrific because, really both grades do matter. But I think our 7th graders in particular have had a really successful year individually. Best in just all sorts of things. They were first place in the 7th grade in their regional. And so they head off to states. I don't remember when the states are. Normally, I think over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had, we've gone up, but we've taken 1 or 2 people just to kind of watch. And they haven't been able to even write. So I think we're taking a full flotilla of folks up there to participate in states, and I'll try to share that out when we have results about those.
I think only 2 or 3 of these kids are not participating in the state, so the rest of the team, I believe, is
Yeah, it's
part of it. So.
Well, the kids who don't participate often get jobs after
Go ahead.
they do
Running
running
and
and stuff,
stuff like
and
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to the Mills Lawn calendar, now that I learned that that's a thing too. It's also not on that one.
Okay. That's good enough. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you. I mean, are we gonna talk about the state superintendent later?
Yes. It's coming up.
Or is it?
Definitely.
Tim's
He's saving
building.
that up, they're saving that one up.
Saving it, Superintendent has to have something to talk about.
Oh, that's a problem?
Ooh,
Oh,
Okay.
let's go.
Okay,
Oh, I
treasurer's
set myself
report
up
and
there.
recommendations. 3.1, financial report.
Well, lucky for you, my report is really, really short.
Lucky for
No,
us.
we got, we received our first half of 2017 real estate taxes, but what that did for the fiscal year is it, when I tallied it up, we came in 2% below what I had projected, and I had only built in a 0.5% increase from last year to this year anyway, so we actually decreased 1.5% from last year. If you look, one of my reports has the, like, 5 different fiscal years on it, and you can kind of see, it's not like it's a steady increase or decrease from one year to the next, and sometimes I think, what I think it is just the county auditor has to set the rates, and it's based on our valuation, and I think sometimes they can just get off target of what that rate is supposed to be, because we can still decrease, because we're not at the 20 mil floor yet, we're at 20.0145, so I'm probably going to talk to him about us coming in lower, because we shouldn't have come in lower, but that might mean he just made the rate a little bit too, he took too much millage out, so I'm going to try to talk to him and see what his opinion is on that. But on the whole for March, we received a lot of revenue. Very rarely do we receive our final tax settlement and then get the homestead and rollback credit, what's now called just the rollback credits, from the state, but we got both of them in the same month. And then we also got our special ed excess cost billings, and that was $167,000. So we just have a lot of revenue in March. It inflates our cash balance when you look at the graphs. It inflates the revenue received when you looked at the graphs. It wasn't anything special, it just all came in at the same time. So, and they were, most everything, both of the rollbacks and the excess costs were right around what I had projected anyway, so. I really don't have anything else to report on. So, do you have any questions? Except for the amounts and rates are on there, a resolution for the amounts and rates, and that's just where the county auditor sets that for the year. And I was always under the impression it was due by April 1st, but he assures me it's October 1st. So last year we did it in September. This year we're back to getting it closer to April, so that's just setting the rates.
Okay.
And then at the bottom of our report, I listed out any grants that we had received during the month. We got a YSEE grant written by Cheryl out for $500. We have a YSPD Jamboree grant from YSCF. That was $300, but we only spent $170 even on that. That was something that teacher Kevin Lane did. And then YSCF, the Charlotte Drake grants, the ones that are run by the students, and we got a $300 grant and a $150 grant.
Okay, anybody have any questions or anything? Okay, so we need to have a motion for 3.2, the acceptance of amounts and rates.
So moved.
Second?
All right, anybody have anything on that? Okay, roll call.
Sylvia?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Aida?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Superintendent's report, please, 3.1.
So I want to talk, if I can, briefly, can we talk about the levy first? I think that's an important conversation to have first, right off the bat. So the first thing I think I want to say is this, is we have a levy coming up in May 2nd on the ballot, and it is a renewal levy. So to be clear about what that means, there are no new taxes being collected. We're collecting the same dollar amount we collected 5 years ago in 2012 when it first passed. Jacob, are you trying to?
I can see the sign.
So.
Should it not be here?
Yeah, right.
Are you saying it should not be here?
Right, there we go.
All right, so we have a levy coming up in May, and so it's a 7 mil levy. Originally, when it was passed as a 7.2 mil levy 5 years ago, and now it's at 7 mils. It's been factored down to 7 mils. But it's going to be collecting the exact same dollar amount from the community that we did before. And again, I think it's just a renewal, no new taxes being collected at all. And so we would love folks to come out and make sure you go out and vote on the levy, for or against. Just it's important for people to come out and vote and show up to the polls on May 2nd. And since it's an off election, usually the turnout's lower. So I think it's critically important folks come out to vote on this issue. And also there's a fire levy, Miami Township fire levy on the same ballot. And so I think it's important for people to come out and share their opinion with the community about both of these levies. The confusion I think some folks have had is mixing this up with our discussions about facilities at this point. Any conversation about facilities is just that, they're conversations, and we are going through an exploration process with the community about facilities. We are not asking for a vote on any facilities at this point, and if we did, it would be a whole year from now at the earliest to be able to do that. And so we feel like that's a long process that's going to happen, but to be clear, this levy in May has nothing to do with facilities. It's purely a renewal, and there are no new taxes being collected at all. So the second, I think, issue we want to talk about is facilities. And so a couple things I think have happened. I just want to review the whole process of what we've done at this point, and some things I think we've said at previous board meetings, but I think it's important to reiterate again. So part of this all started with a 2020 plan back in 2011, in December of 2011, that was approved by the community, and the Board of Education approved in December, at the December board meeting that year. And a big plank, if you will, or priority in the plan specifically deals with infrastructure and really reviewing the infrastructure of our school buildings at some point during the 10-year strategic planning process. And so we decided to take that on this year, and to really, in 2017, we have 3 years left, I think, in the plan, and so this is one of the few plan elements that we still really need to tackle. And so we started with collecting and asking for RFQs, which are requests for qualifications from any architectural firms that could lend support in terms of architectural support, in terms of helping us with a community engagement process around facilities and really having that discussion with our community. And so we landed on there were several different firms that applied. We got a committee together that was representative of the community, and that committee ranked to the top 3 firms. Those top 3 firms were then sent to the Board of Education for an interview in a public board meeting, and the board interviewed all 3 firms over a series of time, and then ultimately made a decision to approve the contract with one firm, which was Richley Architects, who have been working with us now for a good month and a half now on this work. And so it's been great working with Richley, and we think they're the best firm that meets the needs of our community, and really have done some creative and amazing architectural work around schools for a while now. We then created the Faculty Advisory Committee, which is a committee of community members, and again, a pretty representative community, to meet and talk and give us feedback on specifically where we're going with this work. And we've had one big meeting with them recently that preceded our first community forum, which we held just a few weeks ago at the Yellow Springs High School cafeteria. And so it was a very large group. It was great. The whole room was filled. I think we had 70 people, I think, there, which was a great turnout. We're going to have another committee, so let me kind of put that out there now so folks know when that date's going to be. And I wrote that down. It's May 4th, the evening of May 4th, and I believe it's 6:30 and we'll get information out there for folks to see in the papers in the next few weeks. But May 4th at 6:30, it's going to be right here at the Mills Lawn School gym this time, so we'd like everybody to come out, and if you didn't get to come the first time, we really want to hear your feedback, regardless of what it is. We want to know how the community really feels, so then the board can be informed and make the right decision as to whether to go forward and what direction we want to go in. I think it's an important point to say that no decisions have been made whatsoever about this. All viable options are on the table, including the option to not run a levy at all. And so we want to hear from the community and see where we should be going with this. I think it's also important to point out that, the question is why now? Why are we coming to this decision now? I think there are 2 things that are really worth sharing. One is around maintenance, real key maintenance issues that we have with our buildings, and the second is around pedagogical shifts and changes that are needed. So I guess in terms of maintenance, I think it's an important point to make that there is really no cost neutral option. That there is a cost for doing nothing. So if we continue to not have a levy on the ballot, if we decide to move forward without that, that bears a cost with it just as much as passing a levy and putting a levy on the ballot has a cost associated with it as well. So I'll give you an idea what that means. So annual maintenance costs. They've risen, and we think they're going to continue to rise as we go forward. Over the last 5 or 6 years, Don put some numbers together, and the maintenance costs have risen. It hasn't been great enough for me to really emphasize that as a good reason at this point going forward, but we think it's going to continue to rise at rapid rates, especially as we go forward, and there's a few reasons why. We're looking at a portion of the Mills Lawn School roof over the library right now that has had some leaks, and we did some repair work on it a few years ago. And it turns out that that roof probably needed to be replaced. And so we were looking to try to do the cheapest option that could work, and it turns out that option is not working for us. And we worked with a construction company who did the work, and we're under warranty, and so we're working through trying to get that taken care of now. But just to get an idea of the cost of roofing, I said, well, how much would it cost to, at today's rates, to repair a roof about that size? And the answer was pretty astounding. Just for literally 20% of Mills Lawn's roof would cost $200,000 to replace at this point. That's a key factor. And we think over the next 10 years, we're going to have to replace most of the Mills Lawn School roof, if not all of it, as well as a good portion of the high school roofing out there as well. So really, you're talking about, conservative estimate is by today's dollars, anywhere from $1 million to $2 million in roofing expenses just in the next 10 years. That's a significant expense to the village, and that's one we have to consciously be aware of it, that if we do nothing, that expense is still going to be there and will be a significant cost for us going forward. I think the other thing that I think is worth pointing out, so just recently I heard this, and I think it's worth sharing. I just heard it yesterday. We're trying to make a decision about whether we should repair the Mills Lawn gym floor. So the gym floor at Mills Lawn, if you've ever been there and tried to play basketball or anything, it bubbles like crazy. It's really in bad shape. It needs to be replaced. But we are sort of struggling with this idea. Do we replace it now? Do we wait to see what the community wants to do? But because to replace just that small gym floor in Mills Lawn, it's not even a real wood gym floor, is $50,000. And it would take roughly 4 weeks to do that replacement. So now we're up to $250,000 automatically very soon that we have to spend here. But I think those are things that happen in buildings. The bigger issue, I think, is what I think is the big canary in the coal mine, if you will, is I just was informed that we need to start replacing some doors at Mills Lawn School. And so specifically, the boiler room door in Mills Lawn needs to be replaced. This is an original boiler room door, and what I think is going to start happening, and we're seeing signs of it already, is that the doors on the building, basic functions of the building, from a building that was made in 1952, are starting to fall apart. And so this boiler room door to replace is going to cost us $8,000 for one door. One door, $8,000. I think it's important to understand the costs of an industrial facility like we have here, or a school building that requires significantly high impact equipment. Then I learned that we have 2 other doors in the building that need to be replaced, and it's going to cost $3,000 for each of those. So here we have $250,000, plus if I'm doing my math right, that's $261,000 already in things that need repaired just because we're in the current facility. And my guess is, the reason I think that's canary in the coal mine is because we're just at the beginning of these issues popping up at Mills Lawn. And I think it's going to continue as we go forward over the next few years. I also think that's going to happen more at the high school as we go forward. And so the cost of doing nothing is real, and it's important, and I think it's something we really need to consider going forward. Right now we have a levy, a permanent improvement levy in our schools that raises approximately $125,000 a year, and that is simply not going to cover the costs of any of these repairs. And so to really pay for these things, it's going to have to come out of the general fund budget, which is ultimately part of our operating money and eats into what it takes just to basically operate our schools. And so in addition to all of that, we have to probably get another school bus, and that comes out of the permanent improvement fund. And if we're getting $125,000 a year for permanent improvement, and our school buses cost what, $100,000 basically for a new school bus, you can see how much money's left for repairs and other things in an annual budget. And so real problems here, they're really serious issues. And so to give you some perspective, we've been in Mills Lawn here since 1952. That portion that I was talking about over the library was built in 1957. And then there are a few classrooms that were part of a 2001 renovation that went in place. But it's important to note that that's a very small portion of this building that was built in 2001. The great majority of it was built in 52 and 57. Yellow Springs High School was built in 1963. And the McKinney trailers, they also call the shoebox, were built, or moved, I shouldn't say they were built, they were moved in, rolled in, I should say, in 1988. And
They were bought used.
I didn't know that, that's an interesting fact.
Wow.
And they were supposed to be a temporary solution in 1988. And here we are,
That's painful.
almost 30 years later, with those same trailers in our schools that were supposed to be a temporary solution, and I just learned today they were used when we got them. So what we did is we dressed them up. We had the trailers pulled in, but we actually dressed them up with bricks and put them around the building to make it look like a real, actual, school building. And really, but they're not, and that's the truth of the matter. But here's what the kicker is that I learned recently. The Bryan building, which was the original Bryan High School, was built in 1932, I believe. It's 31 or through 33, one of those times. I believe it was 32. We have been in Yellow Springs High School almost twice as long as we were in the Bryan building, Bryan High School. Almost twice as long. So I think it's important to have that perspective of where we are, because sometimes time flies by us and we don't realize how long we've been in the buildings we're in. But really, we've occupied space in Yellow Springs High School almost twice as long as we were in the Bryan Center building. So I think there's a real need for this. In addition, we have challenges with storage for projects and supplies, and we need maker equipment. And then there's pedagogical issues, which I can speak to very briefly. I'm sorry, I know I'm being long-winded here. So I will move fast.
The first step in solving a problem is admitting that you have it.
But I think this is important, and it's important for the community to hear about it. So we're severely limited on space, and there's a lot of work we're trying to do that requires, we actually have no space for storage. I don't think folks may not know that in the community, in the village here. We have literally no space for storage anywhere in the school district. Jacob's shaking his head, he knows it very, very clearly. It is, even if we had, so we have to store things in interesting places, like the library. We have to store things in other places, like the parts of teachers' classrooms that takes up other space for kids to do other work. And, store things in Donna's office, as an example,
Office/storage space, we share.
And so we've had to find creative ways to figure out what to do with storage, and it's a huge issue for us, and it's going to become an increasingly growing problem as we go forward. So the work we're doing with project-based learning, which by the way, we shifted our pedagogy before we created a new building, when most school districts change their buildings first, and then adopt pedagogy to work with the new building. So we've done the hard work of changing our pedagogy first, and we're now trying to find buildings that match our pedagogical needs. And so what we need requires larger hallways, significantly larger hallways than we have right now, more windows and natural light in classrooms and throughout the school, large common areas for kids to work in groups, group spaces, or perfect timing. Like group spaces or breakout rooms, if you will, for kids to be able to work in groups and do some of the work we need to do. We need flexible walls to support interdisciplinary projects work so that kids can learn math and science at the same time, or reading and language arts and social studies within two teachers partnering together, and all you have to do is open a wall and have a mega classroom where teachers can work together on projects. We need those walls to be soundproof though as well. And space for performances. For a school that's as great as we have been in theater arts and also in the performing arts and in our band and our orchestra for such a long time, it is really unfortunate that the one probably glowing omission or mistake I think we have in our school district is for such a long time we have these great arts programs but absolutely no performance venue on our school grounds. That's a huge problem for us, and it's something we need to work on, and I think that needs to be paramount and a critical part of this project going forward if we are to go forward with it, and something that I think needs to be addressed because there's been a need for a long time, and in the meantime our kids have had to scramble and go other places for practices, go other places to be able to have a performance, and venues that just are not quite fit for the needs our kids have, which should be on the high school campus and on the grounds of our schools that we currently have. So, real maker spaces as well, that meet the needs of the buildings, that give me more conference rooms. There's lots of reasons to move forward, and I think if this screen's never going to happen, I think we need input from the community and support for the community going forward. So I'm going to ask everybody to show up on May 4th at Mills Lawn School Gym and come on out and give us your feedback because we want to hear it, and it should be a great conversation going forward.
Thank you.
Do you want to talk about the state superintendent business instead of me?
Yeah, well, today we hosted, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, Paolo? Paulo Di Maria, who is our Ohio State Superintendent. He came to visit. We also had a panel of students who sat around. He asked questions. They sort of responded to questions. I have this whole list of, what these kids said, how impressive, how poised, how composed. Every one of our students made eye contact with whomever they spoke to. They each offered different comments about their experiences through project-based learning. Each of them had some little morsel or gem to share about their discovery and their learning. And every single kid who was there, and there were a lot of kids there, because there was originally initially a student panel that just talked about PBL, and then the seventh grade panel came in to talk about Into the Wild experience. And every single one of those kids sort of said some incredible thing about their learning process. So I think he was impressed. I'm always impressed when I'm with our kids and they're able to talk about learning. They have a vocabulary about talking about their learning, and they really, really embody their learning. And I think when you're with them, you see that entirely. It just exudes from them. And they're critical too, and even in their criticism or their critique of what's going on, they have a language and a vocabulary that, again, facilitates discussion and facilitates more growth and opportunity. So it was very, very impressive, and I think he was very impressed. So, I don't know, do you want to add anything else?
I think you said it well. I would just add that it was really, we've been working on trying to get Mr. De Maria here in our schools, and our state superintendent before him for several years, and so it was really credit to him to come and visit our schools and to spend some time with us. It's been a half hour longer than he had allotted to, which was great. And my hope is that we can maybe build a partnership so that we can work with the Ohio Department of Education and we can build some support for some of the work we're doing in our community and in our schools. So we were able to advocate with him as well a little bit and have some good conversation about our needs as a district and the kinds of things that we think are important for the state to support us with as well. And so I thought that was a really great opportunity too. And he was gracious, I think, in those conversations, and it was really nice to do that.
So, good job, teachers.
Yeah.
Good job.
Teachers are great. You're doing great.
Well, and so that might bring up a really nice point that both Al and Aida, people coming to do on a late start Wednesday, sometimes it may feel as a parent or caregiver a little bit of an inconvenience while we do training and professional development with teachers, but to go through tuning protocols and see what that looks like and see what our teachers do. You don't have to know anything about education, but you learn a ton. And then you go and see all through Mills Lawn what kind of PBL looks like in reality, and have students talk about it. And then you go up to the high school and middle school and you see the same thing. And then we cap it off with the student panel, and it'll blow your mind. I mean, it is really, I'm always impressed, and we never prep the kids. We just let them loose because they need to communicate, the warts and the things that are remarkable about it in our growth. But there is nothing more impressive. Every community member that's gone through it, and Don Boyer will vouch for it, they said, oh, I know what good progressive instruction is, or I know what good teaching and learning is. They come out of it all like, I had no idea. I had no idea. And I know it's not easy to pull off a day, but if you can come and then talk about what you see, it's remarkable. It really is.
Yeah, so people watching at home, we want community members to be part of this. So if you are really interested, please get in touch with myself or Don Boyer, and we can sort of arrange an opportunity for you to come in, or any of the principals. We can figure out a way to do that. We'd love to have you come and be part of our visits and see what's going on in our schools every day, because I think it's pretty powerful, and we'd love to make some space for our community members to come on each of these visits as well. So.
All right. Moving on to the consent portion of our calendar, the administrative portion, 4.2 through 4.5. Is there a motion?
So,
Second.
All right. Any discussions or anything?
Yeah, maybe I should talk, I want to talk a little bit about, and Don, you can jump in if you'd like, 4.2, just to be clear so folks know what that is. Basically, this is a resolution that needs to be passed, so let's just say that, so what we have so far on the table in terms of options are options that for facilities that are on our school grounds and our current school property. But let's say that there was interest at some point in other property throughout the village, and the school district potentially wanting that to be an option, like another site to be an option for the community to consider. The first step before we go anywhere with that is to pass this resolution, which allows us to at least start having conversations with other entities, serious conversations with other entities about potentially coming up with some kind of agreement that says that if the community chooses this option, this is the locked-in price, if you will, that we would pay for that facility or whatever it may be, because we can't present an option to a facility or a piece of land to the community unless the community knows exactly how much it's going to cost. We can't do that unless we have this resolution potentially to be able to look at that and be able to do that kind of work. So this is a first step, and once we pass this resolution, it will allow us to start talking a little bit more seriously with entities in the community that are interested, potentially have property that could be of use to the district and that could be an option that we can present to the community. So this doesn't in any way push us into making any kind of purchase or any kind of a real estate agreement. All it's doing is giving us a chance to potentially get some kind of an intent letter in place that will lock in a potential price only if the community thinks that's the best option, and then only if the community votes to support that levy once it goes through. So really, we are way ahead of anything that would ever get to a point of a purchase itself. So I just want to make that clear that there is no purchasing happening here. This is just giving us the opportunity to be able to talk about that with those entities.
Very good, okay. Anything else? No? Okay, roll call.
Steve?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Aida?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Sylvia?
Yes.
Aida, I'm sorry, I didn't comment on this, but donation very quickly, I believe, and Tim, you can verify this.
Those two?
Yeah, these are donations that are 4.5, $7,500, $1,000 from 2 different donors within the community, specifically to support our 8th grade trip. So if you remember the conversation about them
fantastic.
making that
Yeah.
second trip to New York,
To Oslo.
well, you dream big, and here's it happens. And so we want to thank those donors who are anonymous for what you've done. We really appreciate the gift that you've given our kids, and they're going to have an amazing experience as a result of that.
Is it also the case, Dawn, that you helped hustle some of this?
Well, in fact, I want to say
So,
that's
That was my
exactly.
next point, actually, yeah, is that Dawn has been hugely been part of that. She was really instrumental in getting that done and building those relationships and able to really make that happen. So we greatly appreciate the work you've done. And this was a big, big major gift for us, I think, to really get us going in the right direction. So thank
So
you.
this is a trip to Washington and then up to New
Yes.
York to see
Yeah.
Hamilton.
Oslo.
Oslo.
I wish it was Hamilton. I think.
Yeah, we're happy it's Oslo.
All right.
After we heard that presentation, we're happy it's
That's
Oslo.
right.
Yeah, that's right. Oslo's great.
Was
Yeah.
it always Oslo?
Oslo was about the.
Yeah, it was
No, but
Oslo.
was that always what it was?
Yes.
So
Okay.
this person somehow was connected with Hamilton originally.
Oh, okay.
I knew somebody through that.
Okay.
That might be
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, we're moving on to the continued administrative portion of the consent calendar. Bless you, Steve. 4.2 through 4.5. Oh, no, that's what we just did, sorry. Now, this is the personnel, 4.6 through 4.8. All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All right, any pull-outs or, gosh, bless you.
So the 4.8 is just FYI, it's non-renew all the co-curricular contracts for the year, and it kind of ends that whole, this is a lot, I can't scroll, let's get everything on here, so.
No,
Okay.
I mean, this is the same as it happens every year, right?
Yes.
Yep. Thank you. There's a lot of teachers who take on these extracurriculars and community volunteers and other, not volunteers, but personnel, so it's a great opportunity to thank everybody too. All right, so roll call.
Yes.
Aida,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Okay, we're on to 5.1, Green County Career Center report.
You know, it was a quiet month at Green County Career Center, so nothing much to report.
All right, thank goodness. Our Career Center representative is getting sick right in the current.
Yeah, but we're all sick like in 2 days. We're coming for you, Steve.
Your voice is getting deeper. Yeah, no, I'm working on Lauren Bacall thing.
I think you're way beyond that.
Okay, so we're moving on to any other board member items. Anybody have anything? I mean, I could just continue to gush about our kids.
Go for it.
That was really exceptional. I got to spend yesterday morning, late start Wednesday, talking with the teachers and then doing that protocol. And then to have that follow up with today was just like icing on the cake.
That's something we didn't mention
Very
actually
interesting.
about yesterday morning with teachers, and maybe that's something we're sharing too, I think, so people know at least.
Yeah,
I can probably do that.
yeah,
So,
go ahead.
in addition to the work with the community and doing the community forum, yesterday morning, we spent at least an hour of the late start Wednesday time, meeting as a whole faculty with Mike Richley and myself, and we talked essentially about all of the planning options that we shared at the original community forum, and gave teachers a chance to really weigh in on how they felt and what they thought. It was a little tight at the end in terms of time. We could have probably used another hour for sure. We didn't have it. And so it was a great opportunity, and I think we really received some quality feedback from teachers, and we're going to see about other ways to get more feedback from them going forward.
So, yeah. So, okay, so don't forget, high school plays coming up, not this coming weekend, but the next 2 weekends, right? Exhibition nights in May. Things are winding up.
Yeah, they went
Soon to
down.
wind down.
Exactly.
And then, of course.
They're winding up for the big downhill slide to wind down.
Right. And then, of course, at the end of May, graduation. So everybody be aware, look in the newspaper. There's a lot happening. All right, so now I am going to suggest we move into our executive session. And it is for the employment dismissal, discipline of an employee, and investigation of complaints against an employee, as well as the purchase of property for public purposes or the sale of property at competitive bidding. So, do I need to,
Motion and second.
yeah, motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so,
Aida,
yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Sylvia,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
and
Yes.
All right.
At
Thank you,
8:15.
everybody.